They say that in the Peruvian jungle, everything that falls into the water comes back changed. Larger, more violent, or simply no longer human. I didn't believe that until a well appeared on my uncle's farm that nobody remembered digging, and something came out of it that had no right to exist. I grew up in a small community deep in the low Peruvian jungle, on a farm surrounded by banana trees, cornfields, and trees so tall that at night they seemed to seal off the sky. For us, the forest was a part of the house. We played in it. We worked in it. We listened to the frogs, the crickets, and sometimes things nobody wanted to name. My Uncle Julian always said, "The earth speaks, but you don't always have to answer it." I didn't understand what that meant until the well appeared. It was the height of rainy season. One morning, my uncle called out for us, loud, urgent. I ran over with my cousin Gerson, thinking one of the cows had gotten loose. What we found stopped us both. A perfect circle of wet, moss-covered stones sitting in the middle of the farm, right where there had only ever been grass and mud. "Who did this?" my uncle muttered, walking slowly around it. There were no marks from a pickaxe or shovel, no disturbed earth around the edges, no sign that anyone had dug anything. It was as if the well had simply risen up from the ground, complete, ancient, as though it had always been there. But we had walked past that exact spot every single day of our lives. Inside, there was only darkness, no sound of water, no cool air rising up the way it does from a normal well, just a black hole that swallowed light whole. "Don't go near it," my uncle told us. "That thing is not ours." That was the first time I saw real fear in an adult's eyes. Not fear of an animal, not fear of an armed man. Fear of something the jungle only lets you see once it has already decided you've gone where you shouldn't have. That same afternoon, my grandmother came to look. She was one of those women who carries every story the land has ever told. She stood in front of the well, made the sign of the cross, and murmured something in Quechua and Spanish mixed together. "This wasn't here," she said, without looking away from the hole. "When the earth opens its mouth like this, it's because something wants to come out, or because something wants to eat. We were forbidden from going near it. My uncle covered it with old boards as a makeshift lid, and life went on, or so we thought. That same night, the jungle felt wrong. In the rainforest, there is always sound, insects, frogs, rustling leaves, something. But around the farm, a thick and suffocating silence settled in. The only things you could hear were the distant river and a persistent dripping, like water falling from somewhere very high up. But it wasn't raining. I couldn't sleep. I got up for some water, and as I passed the window that faced the farm, I heard something else. A whisper, not clear, not full words, like many voices speaking at the same time, from somewhere very far below. I froze. Then I heard my grandmother in the other room praying louder than I had ever heard her pray. "Mother Jungle, don't take anyone tonight." She kept repeating it over and over. The next morning, my uncle was in a dark mood. "Someone went near the well," he said. "The boards have been moved." I said nothing. I hadn't left the house, but on the stone edge there were marks, like thin, mud-covered hands had pressed there, pushing upward, trying to get out. The fingers looked too long. It must have been kids from the village, my uncle wanted to believe. My grandmother just murmured quietly, "Kids don't leave claw marks." The third night was the worst. My cousin Jerson had the bad habit of sneaking out to smoke. He knew that if my uncle caught him, he'd never hear the end of it. So he always went to the same corner of the farm, the side closest to where the well was. He came back pale, literally drained of color, like the jungle had pulled the blood out of him. He walked into the house without a word, sat down on the bed, and started shaking. "What happened?" I asked. It took him a few seconds to speak. "Don't go there," he whispered. "Don't go near that well again. It's not a well." He told me that when he struck a match to light his cigarette, the small flame lit up the stone circle just enough to see. The boards were still in place, but they looked wet, like something below was slowly pulling the moisture out of them from underneath. Then he heard it, a sound like something dragging itself along the inside walls, a slow, wet scraping. The match went out, and in the darkness he heard something he said he would never forget, a long, long exhale. Not an animal, not a person, like something taking its first breath after centuries of waiting. Then a voice, clear, calm, in Spanish, and said, "Don't come up." Not from the farm, not from the house, from below the boards, from inside the hole. He ran back to the house and didn't go out again that night. My cousin swore that whatever was breathing in that well knew his name, because when he turned to escape, the voice called after him, softly, gently, like it had known him his whole life. In the days that followed, working the farm felt heavier than usual, not because of the heat, not because of the rain, because of a smell. Sweet and rotten at the same time, like fermented fruit mixed with something dead. It always came from the side of the well. My uncle tried everything to seal it. More boards, nails, wire, sacks of earth, leaves, everything he could find. The smell never changed. One morning we found something new on a stone edge. Small patches of dried mud, as if something wet had rested there and slowly dried in the sun. In the mud there were imprints like ribs, like a thin chest had lain across the stone for a while. "This is no longer something for men to deal with," my grandmother said. "We should sell this farm and go." My uncle refused. "This land is ours. Nobody is driving us out." But the land had its own opinion. The downpour came without warning. The sky cracked open, and the rain came down with a force that made the tin roof shake and hum. In the jungle, when it rains like that, the whole world shrinks down to thunder, wind, and water, even inside your own head. The farm flooded fast. My uncle went out with a flashlight to make sure the animals were sheltered. I, being foolish and curious, followed without him noticing. The mud stuck to our boots with every step. Lightning lit everything in cold white flashes. And every time the sky ignited, I looked toward where I knew the well was. The boards were gone. The rain had pushed them aside. The stone circle was wide open, overflowing with dark water that seemed not to mix with the clean rain falling all around it. "Hey!" my uncle shouted when he saw how close I was. "I told you not to come near." And then we heard it, a blow from below, like something enormous had slammed against the inside walls, trying to push its way up. Then a second blow, a third. The water in the well began to bubble, not like boiling water, like something very large moving inside it, displacing the liquid with its body. A bolt of lightning lit up the entire farm. For just 1 second I saw something emerging. First, fingers, long, white, skeletal, gripping the stone edge. Then, a full hand, nails too long, yellowed. Then, a thin arm, skin pressed completely flat against bone. My uncle shoved me back, but neither of us could move, because in the next flash of lightning, we saw it almost completely. It was humanoid, but stretched, wrong in every proportion. The torso looked like someone who had starved to death long ago, but was still standing upright. The skin was pale, with a strange, wet sheen, like something that had spent far too long submerged. The arms were enormously long, bracing against the stone the way an insect uses its front legs. And the head was covered in wet hair, plastered flat across the face. From beneath it, 2 sunken eyes barely showed, glowing when the flashlight caught them. There was no logic to how a body that long could fit inside a well that narrow, as if inside there wasn't just depth, but another place entirely. The creature began to rise, slowly pulling its chest out of the water. Every movement made a grinding sound from within, like dry branches snapping one by one deep inside its body. My uncle raised the machete he always carried on the farm. His hands were shaking. The creature turned its head toward him and spoke. The voice didn't come from its mouth. It came from everywhere at once. It sounded like the current of the river and the wind moving through the treetops and the sound of villagers whispering secrets, all layered together at the same moment. "This farm was mine," it said. My uncle went completely still. I felt a sharp pain shoot through both ears, like that voice was simply not built for human beings to receive. The creature dragged itself further out of the well. Its long fingers drove into the earth, sinking deep with each movement. Wherever it touched, the grass turned black. "They buried me," it continued. "They pushed me down here, hungry, thirsty, and the jungle fed me with whatever fell, animals, roots, pieces of men. Now, what the earth gave me, I give back." Every word felt heavy, like it forced the air to move against its own will. That was the moment I understood. We were not facing an ordinary ghost. What was climbing out of that well was not just a dead thing. It was the rage of the earth, given form, using a body that no longer remembered having ever been human. My uncle finally reacted. He shouted a prayer my grandmother had taught him, mixing the names of saints with the spirits of the jungle. All I could manage was to repeat inside my own head, "Don't look, don't look, don't look." The creature moved closer. We could see its chest now, marked by enormous ribs that jutted out like thick branches. And embedded in the skin, small bones, teeth, fragments of other things, as if everything that had ever fallen into that well had slowly fused itself to its body over the years. "Give me back what they took," it said, "this farm and the blood that works it." At that moment, a lightning bolt struck close, so close it blinded us completely. The thunder hit our bodies like a physical force from the inside out. My uncle used that single second to grab my arm and run toward the house. Behind us, we could hear that thing dragging itself across the mud, its hands cutting into the earth like deep plows with every pull forward. We made it to the house and bolted the doors shut. My grandmother was already on her knees, praying with a force I had never heard from her in my entire life. The dogs cowered under the table, whimpering, tails pressed hard between their legs. The creature didn't knock on the door. It didn't need to. What it did was worse. It began to circle the house, dragging its hands slowly along the outer walls, leaving a low rasping sound like enormous nails deliberately marking the wood with each pass. And with every circle, lower and lower, almost like a chant. The farm was mine. The farm was mine. I don't know how long that went on. Eventually the storm began to ease. I fell asleep out of pure terror, back flat against the wall, both hands pressed hard over my ears. When dawn came, everything was silent. We went outside slowly. The walls of the house were covered in deep marks, long, curved lines carved into the wood, as if something had written in an ancient language using claws instead of ink. The earth around the well was churned and blackened, like it had burned without fire. The stone circle was still there, but a hole was filled with clean, perfectly still water, too still, too calm. My uncle stood there, looking at it for a long moment. "This farm is no longer ours," he said, his voice completely broken. "It belongs to whatever is down there. We sold what little we had and moved to town. Nobody wanted to buy the full property. People in the village said the place was haunted, that sometimes, when the fog rolled in, you could see long, pale hands resting on the edge of the well. Years later, I went back alone, out of stubbornness. The jungle had reclaimed almost everything, tall grass, new trees, insects everywhere, but the well was exactly where it had always been, untouched, waiting. I got close enough to see my reflection in the water. For a moment I thought I would just see my older face staring back, but behind my reflection, in the water, another shape slowly took form, elongated, skeletal, sunken eyes looking up at me. It didn't need to speak out loud. The voice arrived directly inside my head. "The farm is still mine, but I always have room for one more. So, if one day you find yourself working on a remote farm deep in the Peruvian jungle, and overnight a stone well appears that nobody remembers digging, don't go near it. Don't throw coins in. Don't make a wish. And above all, don't lean over the edge at night, because there are things the earth buries for a reason, and the worst thing you can do is wake them. If this story stayed with you, like it, and drop a comment that says, 'I want more.' That's how I know to keep bringing you stories like this one.